see that people are joining now. Hello. We're just waiting on some people. We're going to be joined with our peer educators today. We're going to be talking about some of the incidences recently, about the shootings and the recent losses in the API community and how we're all processing through that. And so we have some peer educators that are joining us today, Naomi Kim and Erica Rose Larson, and they're all going to be talking through with me about just some of the ways we're processing, and we're all processing with you. So, yeah. Let me send. Hello. I see that our peer educators are in the chat now, so if they're... Just 1 second, guys. Awesome. Hello. Hi, Rose. How are you?
Hi, Oscar. I'm good. My internet was just bugging, and I was like, oh my God, Instagram's down again. What's going to happen?
Oh my gosh, that happens to me all the time. I had to wear my earbuds because I think something's wrong with my phone microphone. I hope everything, if you guys can hear me well, like, please let me know. But yes. Hello, everyone who joined.
There we go. Okay, I had to fix my light. It looks like Naomi got kicked out.
Yeah. Did I kick her out? If I did, I didn't mean to. Let me see.
Not sure.
I'm so sorry, everyone. We're trying to get, we have another peer educator who's joining us, Naomi Kim. And
oh, yeah. Okay, I think. Okay.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
going to leave and try to see if I can fix that.
Okay.
1 second. In the meantime.
Yeah, so let me just introduce what we're going to be talking about today. I think Rose just left. She's freezing on my end, but yeah, we are going to be talking about last week's shootings, this week's shootings, how we're feeling, how we're processing that. It's really heavy, and I acknowledge that. So I want us to also acknowledge how we're feeling. If we feel like we need to stop listening or disengage, that's totally, feel free to do that. And hello to everyone who did join. We're super happy that you're here. And also, I just wanted to say, like, if you have any feelings or emotions or thoughts, please feel free to just write that in the comments, and we're willing to hear you out. We want to see that from you too. Okay, Rose is back with us. And just to preface this conversation, we're going to be talking about different forms of racism that we may not understand at the moment, that we might need some definitions, we might need a few more terms to better understand it. And for me, at least, this has been a way for me to process through what's been happening, to understand. And for a long time, I've been feeling very numb and very confused on how to feel, how to react. And so understanding these terms have been really helping me. We're going to be sharing a little bit about that and some of the ways we've been processing. But feel free to share how you've been processing as well. We would love to hear it, and just support each other. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Welcome back, Rose.
Hi, glad to be back. Were we
Yeah.
able to get Naomi in here?
No, I'm not sure. Let me see. I think that she is in the chat right now. So.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Day.
Oh my gosh, are your parents in the... That
Yeah,
is
my mom's
so
here.
sick. That is so awesome. Nice to meet you all.
But yeah,
Okay.
so we'll get started in a minute or two here, and I'll lead
Mm-hmm.
us into a real short breathing exercise just to make sure that we're not, holding any tensions before we go into this topic because it's hefty, but it's really important, and we're really happy that you guys are here. Thanks to Ed.
Mm-hmm. As we do wait, I want us all to just like whatever we have been thinking about, whatever we were doing, just like put that in the back burner for now. Like literally focus on how you're feeling right now. If you need to take some time to breathe, we're gonna do a breathing exercise soon too. Um, and just like be mindful of how your body's reacting as we talk about this, how your mind is reacting, and any feelings, any thoughts that you have, they're valid. Find the best way to cope with those feelings and thoughts, um, and and we'll be processing those together if you want to write that down in the chat.
Okay, looks like Naomi's having some trouble um,
Yeah,
coming in for some reason. So we'll just
yeah.
have to get started without her, but she will be here. She's in the chat, so we'll be mindful of her responses going forward and yours as well. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I will just lead us through a real quick breathing exercise. So if you're sitting down right now, just put both of your feet on the floor. You're going to take your hand on your palm and put it on your lower stomach area. So your thumb is kind of on your belly button and the rest of your fingers are underneath. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Just like that. And we're just going to do 4 counts of breath going in, and you're going to want to feel your stomach expand. That way your lungs are filling up with air and not filling up your chest with like that tension, anxiety breath. So just take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, filling that belly up. Hold it. Breathe out. Feel your stomach contract, and then one more time, a slow, deep breath in. Do one more. Feel the tension leaving your neck, your shoulders, wherever else that you might hold tension, and just breathe. Oh Lord. All right. One more deep breath in. Hold it. Thank you for doing that. Sometimes our body holds tension that we don't really recognize, and breathing is just a good way to get that out.
True that. Thank you for leading that.
Of
Uh,
course.
yes. So would you like to introduce like what we're going to be doing or talking about today a little bit? Um,
Yeah, of course. So today we wanted to, like we mentioned before, we wanted to address, the Atlanta shooting. We aren't going to be talking about hate crime specifically, but we did want to kind of just start the discussion about microaggressions and kind
mhm,
of what those are, what those look like, and just recognizing the importance of knowing that these microaggressions and things are kind of what open up this really sad and disgusting door that allows a community to be dehumanized
mhm,
in the eyes of a society that they exist in and that they contribute in. And that's how things like, the Atlanta shooting, the hate crimes that we've been seeing and stuff,
mhm.
that's how they happen. So, yeah, Oscar is going to kind of introduce us to the idea of racial microaggressions, and I'll let him go ahead and do that.
Yeah. But before that, I just wanted to also say like, um, if you guys have any thoughts, any feelings, please write down in the comments. And also today we're not trying to deviate from any of the news that from last week or this week or just any of the hate crimes that have been happening. We feel for the AAPI community and we truly want to support in any way that we can.
Yeah.
And we are all individually processing. However you are processing, that is valid. We'll be talking about some of the common emotions and some of the way we've been processing and our feelings as well later on. But just to identify what microaggressions are so we can have a better understanding of what our feelings are and how understanding these terms can help us kind of understand what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, a little bit better. And so we'll be able to have those times of processing together. I want this
Yeah.
to be a time of just us being there for each other as well. And yeah.
Yeah.
And if
How have you been processing, Oscar?
thanks for asking. I've been processing better. I think last week was really difficult just because even before last week, there's been a lot of hate crimes, and a lot of especially like targeted hate crimes against Asian populations in
Yeah.
areas that I grew up in, and I've seen videos, and I think every time I see like new news, it makes me
Mhm.
more scared of going out. It makes me like more fearful of my grandparents, more fearful of my parents who have health conditions, and so I think I've just never been this hyper vigilant about like, oh, my safety. And I know other communities have experienced other forms like this as well and can relate. And I've talked to a few individuals who said like, oh, this has been experiences that I've experienced in the past as well. So we were able to share those with each other and in some way support each other during this time. And so I really appreciated that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it it feels really new, to be honest. And um, a way I've been processing is talking with people, to be honest, and that has been super empowering and healing, and a way that I'm trying to understand it as well is just through identifying what um, like different forms of racism. So we'll be talking about that later, but um, yeah, it's been pretty hard, and I feel very numb to it, and I think naturally I want to avoid the situation. I
Yeah.
don't know if anyone can relate to that, but recently I've been engaging it more, and it's been a lot more healing for me.
That's good. Yeah. It's hard and it's scary, and it, like the first response that, we have is to kind of want to back away. But, I relate to you on that sense of hypervigilance, like when BLM
Mhm.
first started, that's, how I felt, you know, and that can be really, really difficult and scary. So I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, but I'm glad that you have, community of people that you can talk to and stuff. But yeah, for me, like processing was definitely slower than it normally is with this, just because, I hadn't heard about hate crimes that were happening to the Asian community before. Like, the stereotypes, that racism happens to people of color, but it was just so shocking to see all of a sudden in a week all of these hate crimes happening across the country. And then, for the Atlanta shooting to happen, it was difficult to take in. And I know that I felt really numb and didn't know how to um, respond or anything. And, I appreciated the jump that people were having on social media, but I wasn't sure how to be intentional with my care and how to reach out to my friends, knowing especially what it feels like to be, in a time where a community is being attacked and not know how to ask for help or what to
Mhm.
expect. So it's definitely nice now being able to like have conversations, and this is even a form of processing that we're doing
Yeah.
now about education and talking about it and speaking with others. So if any of you guys also want to share about how you've been processing, feel free to. um,
Mhm.
yeah, I know Naomi is here and she shared a little bit about
Yes.
how she's been processing recently too. So
Yeah. And as you guys do share some of your feelings in the chat, just know that a lot of these will be anonymous. We're trying to keep this within here, which is why we wanted to do this live as well, so we can engage with you all. But also, as you comment, yes, other people might see it right now, but when we repost it on our Instagram, and we will, most likely, no one will see your comments. So it will remain anonymous, and we appreciate your comments.
yeah, and then just to clarify, because I think that we do have a couple new people here, we are just kind of talking about how we've been processing the news of the recent hate crimes towards the Asian community.
Mhm.
So if you have any thoughts or anything that you wanted to share about how you've been processing, that's where we're starting off, and then we're also going to get into a discussion about just the basics of what microaggressions are and how they lead to a generalized idea about a community that leads to them being dehumanized and these more grander and hurtful thoughts and then actions can happen and that puts us where we are today and it's important to talk about what microaggressions are so that we can reverse our language and reverse our behaviors and attitudes to be more accepting and kinder of others because a lot of these things we'll talk about are things that we do accidentally or unintentionally but they still have an effect and so it's important to recognize our speech patterns and to know how to talk to others when they're doing it and may not know.
Mhm. Yeah, and some people are in the chat are sharing as well. Some people are saying that it's very discouraging. And I remember some of the people that did comment on our story. They said that they're very stressed out and very overwhelmed. And that's so understandable. I feel I really resonate with that. And I know some friends that I've been talking to as well. Uh, there's some of them are just feeling really emotional lately and they want to feel refreshed after spring break, but they do not, and balancing with school
Yeah.
and also needing to like stay informed at all times. Sometimes that's really, really hard and really taxing. I know me recently who I've been doing a lot of research on what's been happening and try to inform myself, educate myself. I feel really ta like it's been taxing,
Yeah.
um, and I just want to take a nap afterwards, So, um, definitely acknowledge where your limitations are, and the fact that any of us are thinking about it, talking about it, even the fact that you're here right now, it just shows that you care and you're processing with us, and we appreciate you, and every emotion, feeling, whether like sometimes we acknowledge that, oh, this feeling is not good, or sometimes it's pushing us towards something, they're valid. And so let me just say some common emotions that we may have as we continue this, and then let's lead into talking about what microaggressions are. Because as you said, yes, microaggressions, they're like a ripple effect. And we'll understand that concept a little bit later, but so some common experiences that you may feel right now is increased stress, increased anxiety. Maybe you feel really hypervigilant. I definitely feel that. Uh, Being in the AAPI community, a lot of the news, I literally see my grandparents being pushed when I see that those type of um, hate crimes. And um, I know some people who have experienced, like who know people in these um, different businesses that they can see like the hate crimes that have been happening a lot with certain Asian businesses. Yeah, they can see their close relatives or their loved ones being hurt, and that's something to acknowledge too. That's something to slowly process. Take your time to process.
Yeah.
Alterations in your mood, in your thinking. Maybe you're struggling with school, and maybe we need to acknowledge that maybe this is because a lot's going on, and it's okay to not feel like you are fully okay right now.
Hmm.
Maybe you feel immense shame. I know for me, I feel a lot of shame a lot of times, maybe because of culture, maybe because like I have high expectations for myself, and sometimes I feel like I'm not supporting enough, or different aspects. But I also acknowledge that we have to remember our pacing. We have to acknowledge where we are in the present moment. Right now, we're having this discussion, and this is helping the community. We're supporting the community. So we have to acknowledge every step that we take and we make. We might feel anger. We might feel helplessness. We might experience like we're naturally denying that it happened, or we don't want to deal with it, and I can resonate with that, because there's just been so much horrible news lately throughout the season, throughout quarantine, and another devastating news is really hard to take in. I know that I can relate with that. Dissociation or propensity to self-isolate. these are all things that we may feel.
Definitely. And I see Naomi said she felt shocked and she managed to avoid them. She didn't want to, go through that emotional suffering. And that's just what you were saying too, with,
Mm,
a lot of these emotions. Like when you feel that helplessness, it's very easy and acceptable to jump to, denial and kind of dissociate because that's, what our minds do to protect ourselves with things like this. This is a very, very, very painful thing to experience, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
your heart goes out for these people and all of that. And it's important to really validate that it's okay to not immediately jump on this and as long as you do at some point in any capacity of that, but it's important to not put the pressure on yourself, but to recognize
Mm,
your emotions, take that in, and then do what you can. But
yeah.
yeah, like Oscar said, all of these emotions are super valid, and we felt a jumble of them, so you're not
Mm-hmm.
alone if you've been feeling any of these things at all.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to lead into a short discussion on like how we've been processing. I know last week I talked about how I was feeling a little overwhelmed because I was doing so much research all at once, and it's actually felt really empowering to be able to inform myself, educate myself, have conversations. But it was also a lot of um, it was very taxing on my body and my mind. So what I did actually was I kind of disengaged during the weekend and I took some time for myself to maybe just journal, to focus on how I'm feeling rather than focusing on like what's happening in the world. That might be
Yeah.
very helpful, you know.
Yeah, that's smart. That's good. I'm glad that you were able to kind of find a way to process these emotions because they are a lot. And they
Yeah,
don't always need to be processed in
all at
community.
once.
Sometimes it's helpful, yeah, to just kind of give yourself the time that you need. You can't force these things, but it's also good to find community. And I know that me and you were able to. I was like, Oscar, I don't know what to think about any of this. Can we talk? And you were like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk for an hour and a half. You know? And that's really
Yeah.
great. Yeah, but
Hmm.
even for us, like we could not put together this Wellness Wednesday or anything or any of these statements and things that we've done until we personally processed and stuff. And, there's always that pressure that you have to say something immediately or do something immediately. But I think, good work does take time, but it takes urgency as
Hmm.
well. So I'm glad that we were able to, push each other and share this information because I think a lot of this is really important. And even for me, somebody who's cared a lot about, diversity and racism and stuff, a lot of these things that we're about to talk about, I know so little about. And so I'm so thankful for you, Oscar, for taking the time to educate because it's not the responsibility of somebody in the community, and both of us are in our own separate together communities. But yeah, we are really excited to kind of share with you guys a little bit about microaggressions and stuff, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, you have educated me so much as well. And Naomi, like every single person's experiences really matter, especially in regards to racism or our experiences like in different institutions that we may feel be in and maybe being discriminated against and like all these stories really compound and just like if we remember the goal is to love on each other, like I think that's what matters most. And so I appreciate that we were able to have those discussions as of recently and really process together. I think that's been really healing
Me
for a
too.
lot of us. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what racial microaggressions are.
Yes, let's
Um,
get into it.
yeah, so sometimes racial microaggressions are also termed this because micro is like something small, right? And then aggression is something that we can see sometimes. Sometimes we Nazi, but racial microaggressions is talking more about race. Microaggressions can be in many forms, but today we'll be focusing more on the racial microaggressions, also called modern day racism. A lot of times, we are talking about microaggressions, not relating this to the hate crimes that happened recently, but um, I think this is important because most times we see microaggressions, and we don't know how to react. And they're more sometimes more common and more we witness it more than overt rape. Small microaggression that we permit or that we partake in or that we have experienced and we let it go sometimes, allowing that culture to continue to boil can lead to hate crimes, can lead to these really greater forms of racism. And if we don't take the time to really understand and acknowledge the harmful effects of racial microaggressions, it can lead to detrimental effects. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about what racial microaggressions are, and basically they're just everyday subtle remarks that are racial, that kind of assume or sometimes insult or invalidate people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, what's it called? Microaggressions are also very confusing and ambiguous. So a lot of times the people who are victims to racial microaggressions do not know how to react. And research shows that people who are experiencing racial microaggressions, they're the ones um, who do not know how to react, and that has more harmful effects than overt racism or racism that is apparent, and that they know that, oh, this is racism. When they do not know how to react to it, like sometimes that can be more harmful to the individual because they can't stand up for themselves. I'm so sorry for the back and forth definition. If anyone has questions, like please feel free to ask in the chat. But we'll be identifying three, which are micro assaults, micro insults, and micro invalidations. And
Yes.
yeah,
I forgot one. What did I tell you?
no worries.
And micro invalidations were my favorite to learn about too.
Yes.
I know I forgot that one. But
Yeah, and we're just going to name some of the types of micro assaults, micro insults, and micro invalidations,
yeah.
because it would be important for us to acknowledge what they are and understand it a little bit better so we can identify them when they're being used.
Yeah. So starting off, we have micro assaults, and we're not going to go super in depth with like difficult definitions and all of that. I implore you guys to go and research about it. Hello. There's plenty of
Yes,
articles and
sorry.
stuff you can read, but we just want to give you guys like some short examples and stuff, just so you have something to think about. So yeah, Naomi was going to cover micro assaults, but we'll cover that for her since we're having technical difficulties. But she's here in the chat. Naomi, if I forget anything that you wanted to say, you text us or you pop in the chat. But micro assaults are things like name calling. So a lot of the things that we've been seeing, and I hate to even say these things, so Oscar, like, help me out here. But yeah, micro assaults are like anything that's like name calling or just hurtful to the community, harmful and painful to individuals. They're not said. I mean, to me, these seem to be much more malicious, I think, compared to the rest of them. But Oscar, I don't know if you want to like give some examples of micro assault.
Yeah, so micro assaults are a lot of times more apparent. Sometimes we call it micro still because they might be unconscious to the perpetrator or whoever is saying this or behaving in a way that is assuming something about a race or so yeah, let me explain. It's kind of confusing sometimes, so please feel free to ask any questions. But micro assaults are things like name calling or holding flags or holding symbols that might have a bad history of oppression against a recipient of color. Maybe it's talking about like it's phrases that we use, maybe saying coronavirus or chink virus, China virus. A lot of times when we allow these certain phrases or names to be said, it's targeted towards a population, and those people don't know how to feel, or maybe they know that it's racism, but they're being like termed or defined by that. It doesn't feel good, and if we allow that to happen, a lot of times it perpetuates this um, idea that it's okay and that we can continue doing that, but we forget that we might not be the recipients of this type of racism, and we have to acknowledge how is that person reacting to this? Are they feeling disempowered to speak up?
Yeah.
Do they have a voice to speak up about it? Maybe I have to speak up for them. So it's important to acknowledge that. And micro assaults are very harmful and painful for individuals, and so um, they're sometimes more easy to identify. So maybe that's a good thing for us to stand up for people who are experiencing micro assaults.
Yeah.
Um, but what's hard, it's actually, I think the opposite of what you were saying about the micro assaults being worse, because a lot of times research shows that when it's more ambiguous, when it's more hidden message of
Mhm.
racism, it's worse for the individual because they don't know how to stand up. They cannot stand up for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to characterize, and say, well, that person is just, saying a racial remark versus like having to almost validate what they're saying because they're joking. And in the moment, you're like, ooh, I can't really call this out right now. And then going home and being like, is that what they really think of me? And,
Hmm.
not being able to say something in the moment or being able to be like, oh, that's just a racist. But it's like, oh, very, yeah, it's
Hmm.
very different to kind of
Or maybe like
on.
saying like, oh, they didn't mean it like that. Like having to reason for your perpetrator. It's
Yeah.
you don't have to, you don't deserve that. You do not have to. If you feel offended or feel offense, I think it's best to be able to, if you need to walk away, or you do not need to take that in. You do not need to internalize it. I think a lot of times in Asian cultures, at least, we internalize a lot of the oppression that we experience, and
Yeah,
so that can lead to depression. That can lead to stress, anxiety. That is not our fault. We can't blame ourselves for feeling that way. Um,
absolutely. And
yeah.
then we also have micro insults, which are basically like verbal, nonverbal communications that just very subtly are rude or insensitive. And specifically with these, they just kind of demean a person's racial identity or their heritage. So that's making fun of stereotypes, and that's super common. I know,
Hmm.
especially when we were growing up, things like that were so okay to do, but now we're recognizing just how detrimental the effect of that is when you
Hmm.
make fun of stereotypes and normalize thinking of people this way. I mean, it can even be maybe you're an employer or somebody at your work office is like, how did you get this job, implying like that maybe you got it through affirmative action, and saying like you got
Hmm.
this job because of your race and not because you were qualified for this position. um, Things like even slightly like describing your appearance. I got called Oreo when I was little because it was like, oh, she acts white, even though she's black, or saying things like, you don't act like your racial group, or you're so attractive despite being part of this racial group, or
Hmm.
just taking away someone's heritage or their racial identity, or um, you know saying something rude or making a comment that's just very hurtful but subtle. And again, these things are often said without someone even realizing that that's offensive to say, or that it's hurtful.
Hmm. Yeah, and so lastly, it would be micro invalidations. And I resonate with a lot of these experiences as an Asian American. Um, I so these micro invalidations are just communications that invalidate or nullify some of our experiences as a person of color, or microaggressions can be in different forms as well, but just negating the experiences of someone. And so I had an experience with a professor um, asking me like that, telling me that I have an accent, which I was okay with. I was like, oh, I probably do. But then like he kept asking, oh, where are you from? And I said, I'm from America. And they continue like peering at me, and it was actually in front of the entire class. Um, and this was after a presentation, and although so this was a micro-invalidation because it kind of perpetuates the idea that a lot of Asian Americans are going to, even though we were born in America, we're perpetual foreigners. We're always going to be foreigners in this country, even though we have our own stories. We have stories that matter too, and like maybe our parents took so much time to come here, and for people to invalidate that can be very invalidating to certain people. I didn't take too much offense at that time, but I remember feeling really insecure about myself. I was like, oh, am I not articulate enough? Am I not eloquent enough?
Yeah.
Um, and just to acknowledge that these microaggressions take take different forms and they can affect different people. Although it might not affect your neighbor or this person who might not have certain experiences to maximize on that experience, other people might. So we need to be sensitive to how people may react to just like small words, like words do matter, and
Exactly. Yeah.
behaviors too. Yeah, and micro invalidation could also be asking people, where are you from or where were you born, um, before asking them about their name. Like you don't even really know them, but you ask them, like an Asian American, for example, where are
Mhm.
you from? Like still perpetuating the idea that they're not from America. But what if I was? And you just
Yeah.
made those assumptions, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Like you
and
get asked
maybe
that question and you hope that they're just like, oh, like, yeah, we're all in college. What, where are you from? And you're like, Delaware. And they accept that answer. But so frequently it's like, no, where are you like
actually
from?
from.
And you're like, for 5 generations, my family's been from Delaware. So I'm from Delaware, honey. Where are you from?
Yep,
And that
yep.
can really just like, it makes you just feel so isolated from a group. And
Mhm.
with all of these microaggressions and stuff, it just plants a seed in your head and it makes you wonder about your identity and how do people see you, and it makes you act in certain ways, and it makes people see you in certain ways, and so it goes both
Yeah.
ways. It's just,
Mhm.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. And lastly, I would just want to say like color blindness can be is something that I learned in college. Um, and I think that it is true. Like sometimes when we think that we don't want to acknowledge color, we're actually invalidating and negating some of the experiences that people of color do experience. And so we need to be sensitive to that. And we need to remember that, oh, sometimes each person of color experiences different things, and we're all individuals, but also to remember that there are certain barriers and limitations and experiences that people struggle based on their intersecting identities, and to be sensitive to that before we say something or witness something, and we have to stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And that can happen in such, like in ways that are meant to be so kind. I can't remember who shared, but I think one of us, it might have been Naomi or you, shared about, trying to express even in the church, like how these things may feel, and someone wanting to cheer you up or
Hmm.
give you something positive by saying, but we are all one in God, and like
Hmm.
there is oneness there, and Jesus loves us all. And although this is true and this can be uplifting when you're trying to express to someone a pain that you might be feeling because your community is targeted, it's also important to remember that like God made us different, and that we have these experiences, and these negative emotions are part of God's journey for us. God felt negative and hurtful
Hmm.
things. um,
Yeah.
and so it's important that in these church settings, we are a Christian school, to recognize like the pain and hurt that a community might be feeling, and to say, yeah, like let's have this conversation and allow someone to vent about how they're feeling, and to
Hmm.
say, this is something that we need to do something about. And then, there can be that reminder that, and that's how you show that, we are all one, is that saying, I will come alongside you in this journey that I
Yeah.
don't know about, because I might be black, but I don't know about your experience, Oscar, you don't know about my experience, I don't know about an
Hmm.
experience of the black person next to me, you don't know an experience about the Asian person next to you. So
Yeah.
it's just important to remember that, like, even though we might be part of a greater community, we're a part of a community and a community and a community as an individual. And so it's
Hmm.
important to just validate, all of these emotions and things that we might be feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's very powerful. And yeah, I remember having like us having that conversation. It's so important to remember that um like although yes, we can focus on prayer and that's good. These are good coping mechanisms.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we also need to acknowledge and name the things that we're experiencing. Name like what it is, deal with that first, and then also pray with it. Maybe we need to have two coping mechanisms at the same time. Um, and yeah, I think for me at least, just naming what it is, and maybe like writing down like how I'm experiencing this during this time has been super helpful. Um, and yeah, I think yeah, just having conversations and reaching out to people. Um, I think a level of humility needs to come with that. That we might not know how people are experiencing, but just reaching out to your brothers and sisters in Christ, and how they're experiencing coping with this. Maybe someone said something to them recently that we do not know yet until we ask them. And just as a Christian community, we can do that for each other as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And we
Hmm.
want to be mindful of time too. I mean, I think we
Yes.
knew that this Wellness Wednesday was going to go for a little bit longer just because
Hmm.
it really did need the space. Like, and we wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that we had that space for, not only us, but for you guys as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so we're gonna, I mean, I think we're ready. Are we ready to wrap it up? Let me check in with you, Oscar.
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
All
almost
right.
at like 40 minutes, so we're good. We're good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just lead us through a quick little shakeout because that was a lot.
Yep.
And just like we said before, we want to validate all of the sad, hurtful emotions, but we also want to like leave room for a new breath of fresh air. So what we do in theater is we do an 8 count shakeout, but that's like it takes forever. So we're just gonna
Yep.
do three, and all you do is you just start with one hand and you just shake it out 3 times, and then you go to the next and you shake it out, and then you take your foot and then you shake it out for 3 times, and you take your foot, three, and then you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then one really quick. Ugh.
Love that.
I feel
That's great.
better.
Oh my God, I love that. I'll be doing more of those things. I think it's important to, yeah, sometimes we're so tense, like I think that can help a lot with tension that we may feel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, so to close off, we wanted to share some resources to wrap up, but if you are right now processing certain emotions, maybe it's regarding this, or maybe it's regarding just a culmination of everything, and I can relate with that. Like if you need counseling from a professional, or just to talk to a professional about how you can personally cope, the counseling center is here for you. Our phone number, and Rose is going to write it down, is 626 815 2109. And you can talk to our person, Kim, who will be able to help you through making an appointment. You are not alone in this. Like, we are here for you, and we're here to process with you all. Um, us as the peer educators, we also wanted to share any time that we are able to commit to supporting you. So we will be sharing our emails in the chat as well, if Rose can put that in.
Of
Um,
course I can, my dad.
yes, yes. Um, but yeah, we are here for you. We also have the People of Color group, the SCRD, that talks about the different issues and being able to process these racial tensions, racial trauma together. And if this is your first time learning through um, this this topic, or trying to understand your process and how your reactions to all of this, some ways to get educated or stand up in the community is through looking at SCRDs, their posts, their events. They do amazing things for the community. And also, there's bystander interventions that we can send you as well. Just send us an email and we'll send you those links. We don't know exactly how to send those links on Instagram,
Yeah.
but we'll definitely be able to send those to you on there as well. And also just reach out to the counseling center if you have any mental health needs as well. We're here for you. In case of emergencies, call 911. If you're a threat to self or others, please don't refrain and call 911 just 24/7. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you guys all so much for coming, even if it was for a little bit or if you stayed for the entire thing. You're a trooper. We thank you
You
so
are a
much.
trooper, yes, and we
Yeah.
love you, yes,
And for everyone watching this on our IGTV later, thank you for watching.
yes. Um, have a great week, guys. Thank you so much for joining this conversation with us. Keep having conversations. Begin to pace yourself this week as well. Take some time for yourself. If you need to disengage, you take a nap, rest, self-care. All of that is important. I know these are just said like these are empty platitudes sometimes that are just randomly said, but truly like do what you think is best for you in this very moment. Acknowledge how
Absolutely.
you feel right now. Acknowledge if you're overwhelmed, that's a good excuse. That's a valid excuse. Go walk outside for 10 minutes. Do that for yourself.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Thanks, Rose, and thanks, Naomi, for joining us today, and
Thanks,
everyone
Oscar.
else.
Bye,
I
both
appreciate you
Naomi.
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, guys.